So how are people able to afford living in New York City? Because I love New York. I
Yeah.
go there as often as I
They
can.
can't.
Well, but they're living there.
They are
They're
living
not
there.
just sitting vacant. You have plenty of people. You walk around Manhattan, you see plenty of people walking in, going to their apartment complex.
A lot of it's sacrifice. I don't know what the debt to income ratio is in, let's say, like greater Las Vegas, but most people live paycheck to paycheck in New York City, even at the luxury level. Like they save very, very little because the quality of living is so high, and the cost of living is so high.
At the luxury level, why would they not just go down a notch to be at like the sub-luxury level to be able to save a little bit of money?
All right, guys. Ryan Serhant just dropped a housing market bombshell on the Iced Coffee Hour, and it gets intense fast. Graham, Stephan, and Jack Selby question him on rising prices, real estate strategy, and whether buying right now is a huge mistake. This debate ramps up, the takes get controversial, and this turns into a must-watch showdown you cannot ignore. Subscribe now to Debt Disaster Daily for more financial truth. Let's jump in. Guys, less than 1% are actually subscribed. I will heavily appreciate you guys if we bump those numbers up. Thank you guys. Back to the video.
A lot of people now argue that we're in a housing bubble.
Really?
That housing is very unaffordable for a lot of people, especially New York City of all places.
Correct.
What do you have to say about that?
I look at a bubble as something that can be explained, but is about to pop. I don't think what we're in is about to pop. I think it can easily be explained. I think we have an unaffordability crisis. I think there's an income gap, obviously, but I think rates are incredibly high. I think there's very, very, very little inventory. We're on year 3 of like 3-decade lows in terms of housing transactions throughout the United States. And that's worldwide, but just so we can focus the conversation here. It doesn't feel like a bubble to me. What it feels like is an unaffordability crisis more than anything. And it's pushing people into rents, but rents are also incredibly, incredibly high. And so something has to give. And so what will probably happen is you'll have an American debt crisis with all of the debt that people have racked up, from buy now, pay later tacos to student debt to auto loan debt to...
That's the craziest part. You're in debt because of tacos? There are people who are actually in debt because of tacos. That is just completely insane. Wow.
Just general credit card debt. I feel like there's a new credit card that gets invented every other day that sells you a bag of rewards, but actually is preying on people's lack of income to be able to afford what it means to actually live in the United States these days. That seems like a bubble to me versus housing. Anyone who's bought a home since 2008 or 2009, let's say after Dodd-Frank, right? You've either paid in cash or you financed. If you finance, you have a 30-year fix or a 15-year fix, and that's a hefty monthly payment, or you've got an ARM, a 5-1, a 7-1, or a 10-1 ARM. And in order to get an adjustable rate mortgage, you have to be approved at the 30-year fixed monthly. So maybe you've lost your job, et cetera, that'll always happen. But I think the rate of delinquencies is not nearly where it would need to be to cause, quote unquote, a bubble.
A lot of the charts seem to show the housing prices outpacing income by like 5 times.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What do you think is causing that specifically? Do you think it's more so land scarcity, or do you think it's government policy?
I think there's policy and tax code that has both hurt and helped the American home buyer and home seller. If you think about like the capital gains write-off, right? If you think like the joint married filing jointly, right, up to $500,000, that made a big difference in the 90s. You know, if you had a house for $500,000 in the 90s and you sold it, like that's an expensive house. Today, that is barely the starter price for a home in middle America, right? 277 cities in the United States right now say a starter home is $1 million and above. Over almost 600 cities have a luxury market that's $1.4 million above. Like that is crazy, but there's no write-offs for that, right? Like what are you going to do? And so there's a lot of equity that people have built up in their homes, and they're just not moving. And so asset prices continue to go up. You have boomers that don't want to sell. Where are they supposed to go? Anyone who has a 2.5% loan that they've gotten at some point in time since 2009 to 2022, where are you supposed to go? So it's the lack of inventory that I think is pushing pricing on top of a very, very slow job growth market.
So how are people?
Yeah, people sleep on the job market a lot. They think, well, this job may pay me a little more. Oh no, maybe this job might pay. The point is, they're both not growing at the same time. Like, sure, there's opportunities. Do not get me wrong. There's job opportunities out there, but it's like completely scarce. So it's not even just the job market that's screwed. It's the housing market that comes with it as well. That's also screwed. Well, they're separate things, but regardless, you need a house and a job, right? At the end of the day. So yeah, both markets are really bad right now.
People able to afford living in New York City? Because I love New York. I
Yeah.
go there as often as I
They
can.
can't.
Well, but they're living there.
They are. They're
They're
living
not
there.
just sitting vacant. You have plenty of people. You walk around Manhattan, you see plenty of people walking in, going to their apartment complex.
A lot of it's sacrifice. You know, I don't know what the debt to income ratio is in, let's say, like greater Las Vegas, but most people live paycheck to paycheck in New York City, even at the luxury level. Like, they save very, very little because the quality of living is so high, and the cost of living is so
But
high.
at the luxury level, why would they not just go down a notch to be at like the sub-luxury level to be able to save a little bit of money?
Like,
or is this
there-
just like a carrot?
Are we
Because
talking
life
like
is short.
Are we talking like $3-4 million condos?
Yeah, people will live, like, we have clients who, when they have a budget, right? So they have $700,000 that they've saved already from renting that they want to put down on a down payment. And then we have to sit there and talk to them and like, okay, so after the 700 goes into the down payment, because you're going to put 25% down, let's say, what do you have left? Because we have to have reserves to get your loan. You're going to have your monthly payment over and over. What if something happens, anything? And they're like, oh, well, it's fine. I'll just make more money. Like, there's this idea that it's fine, I'll make more money, or you can have alternative streams of income that I think is new, right? That's like that's a new feeling that people have, not just.
Well, unless you plan to become an entrepreneur, which, by the way, that's a hefty investment on time, if anything. So unless you plan to do that, I mean, how else are you gonna get more money? Supposedly, doesn't add up. What, are you gonna work 3 jobs then? Because there are people out there who work 3 jobs and they still live paycheck to paycheck, which is incredible.
Just at the $500,000 to $800,000 level, but at, like you said, the $3, $4, and $5 million level, it's okay. I'll figure it out. I can always just make more money. And people don't want to live below their means. No, not everybody's this guy, right? Like, people.
I imagine you live below your means.
I don't know if I live. I mean, I could definitely spend a lot more, but I spend a lot of money to survive and to live in New York
watch
City.
On your wrist.
I've had this for a long time, but I don't look at this as an expense. I look at this as an investment. Every watch I've ever bought, which is not that many, is worth way more now than what I paid for it, right? So I do look at certain things like as investments that way. But I'm not insane with expenses. I grew up in the Great Recession of 08 and 09. Like, I know what it was like back then to not have money and to watch people be totally hurt, and I will never go back to that.
Yeah, I listened to your podcast that you did a while ago with Erica Kohlberg.
Okay.
Back then, you said that you stretched yourself to buy a $3.5 million condo
Yeah.
when you really couldn't afford it.
Correct.
That your budget was like 1.5. And you
Yes.
saw this, and it pushed you to work harder and make even more money.
Yes.
Do you still follow that trajectory?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have a problem.
But it's working.
So how are you
Yes.
applying that today?
I started my own company 5 years ago. Like, I try not to. I don't push myself into situations where I could file for bankruptcy tomorrow. But I think you have to push yourself into situations where you put your back up against the wall a little bit, that if you're in a career where you could be incentivized to make more money, and I don't give this advice to, like, my little brother. My little brother has a W-2 job. He works 9 to 5. I guess he could do some nighttime investing. He could do what some of my other friends do. He could be crypto trading. Like, he could have a weekend job, sure, to always make more money, but then his quality of life and his focus would be incredibly fractionalized, both from like a mental health point of view and actually like a physical labor standpoint. So I don't do that. I think when you're in sales, your fate is what you make of it, right? You just have to make 10 extra phone calls. You can make 10 extra appointments. I could work 7 days a week. And so I pushed myself to buy that apartment. It was 3.7. And then a year later, it was like, I could have gone bigger because I just made more. Then I bought my first, big house, and that was 7.6. And that was terrifying. And then I gut renovated it. And then when I was done, I was like, maybe could have gone bigger. And then started my own company in 2020, just completely bootstrapped for the 4 years and then raised money for the first time in December to have strategic partnerships. I wasn't doing this 100% by myself. And I look at like what our expenses are now, and it's just mind boggling to where I was stressed about just a couple years ago. But we just keep pushing the envelope and keep pushing ourselves to the point where we look back a year before and we say, oh, okay, that wasn't so bad.
Well, that looks like the end of the video. So, yeah, I guess we're just going to end it here. So, moral of the story, well, it's pretty simple. If you cannot afford, once again, the lifestyle or housing, don't, absolutely do not invest in that, in a new house. If you don't have enough income for the next, let's say, year and a half, because of taxes, the extra taxes and whatnot, the extra fees that come in with the housing and everything that comes with it, like the land tax, for example. I don't know, in some states it could be different. Don't invest in that. Do not invest in a new house. You might as well play it safer and just rent it. Or I guess you could get an apartment. But for those who actually really want a house, you might as well rent it. Not worth getting into this mess for sure for like the next 30 years or 50 years, now that Trump actually added that 50-year mortgage, which honestly, to me, I think that's actually retarded. But I digress. And whatever you do not, any older generation that tells you, oh, the reason why you can't make more is because you're lazy, don't listen to them. They're stupid. They don't know what the they're saying. What was demonstrated right here in this video is true. The house market skyrockets. The one thing that did not skyrocket was the wages. They barely go like this compared to this. So these people don't understand that back then a house was literally the price of chips. Now you need to become a millionaire, to put it in extreme analogies. Yeah, now you have to become a millionaire to afford literally a 3-bedroom house or a 4 or 5-bedroom, whatever you guys want. They're no longer that cheap, is what I'm really trying to say. So, yeah, don't listen to those people. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Those days of owning a house and whatnot, and owning a car and whatnot, those days are over, unfortunately. It's the sad truth. Can you still do it? If you're rich, yeah. If you make over 6 figures, yes, for sure. But for those, the 99 or the 95 or maybe the 90% of Americans who are working from paycheck to paycheck, they can obviously not afford that lifestyle. So, yeah. This is Debt Disaster Daily, guys. Thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy this. We're out of here.